I know I already said this, but I'll say it again. I'm really happy to be here. I, I, it was Catherine's turn to give teachings this morning, but if it was my turn, I just felt like saying, I really love you. We have so much appreciation and delight in you and the beauty that's here and the richness of your souls and your dedication and your complications and your wonderfulness. So yeah, just I really love you. So we've got a couple of practical things which I've already forgotten what they are. One thing is about, a lot of you will be used to, or somewhat used to these soul-making retreats and the kind of the culture and the ambience and the vibe here. And some of you less so and more used to Vipassana retreats or standard insight meditation retreats where you may have either received a direct instruction from the teachers or picked up pretty quick on the sort of cultural faux pas and do's and don'ts, where you don't make eye contact and you sort of shuffle down the corridor slowly so it looks mindful, and it looks a bit miserable and that sort of thing. So that's an option. I mean, you're welcome to do that. No, I'm kidding. Sometimes we need to be more inner, right? We need to be, something's going on, it needs my attention. I don't want to be pulled out and into contact. The attention needs to be here, is fine. So if that's what's going on for you, go into that mode. It's fine. If 5 minutes, 5 seconds, 5 hours, it's fine. It's part of the responsibility, responding to what's needed. Yeah. And similarly, if you see someone else doing that, well, they have their reasons to do that. But on these retreats, we're trying to be more open in every regard, and that includes with regard to each other and the heart's connection, the soul connection with each other. So you can make eye contact, you can smile. Careful what happens, though, of course. As Catherine was saying, that do I then have to show up in a certain way? Like, this person's coming down the corridor, I have to give them what I imagine that they want. Just so smile. That's going to do this or that. So you can open up that way, make that connection. Let the body be open, let the soul be open, let the heart be open, let the eyes be open. Be with each other. It's so precious. This the sangha. A lot of soul making happens in relation, not just verbal relation. So let that be here. Like everything, any choice you make comes with its risks and costs. And the risk of doing that is you smile at someone and they or they just stare at you blankly, and okay, then I have to handle that. I have to be okay with that, right? Or is that okay? Yeah. So the relational field is for us, for this, it's very much part of the practice. It's not. We're not just kind of diving in deep to some kind of atomized deconstruction of this psychophysical experience. Yeah, sure, that's great, that's wonderful, and it's not the whole thing. Yeah? Okay? Second practical thing is we will start putting up some interview lists. There'll be groups and one-to-ones. So there'll be a couple tonight after the evening session about 8:30. So have a look. Again, for me, I'm just not sure how things roll. So I will offer as much as I can. And when I can't, it's because I feel like something's going on in body and mind that makes it pretty much not going to be helpful for you. Or I'm just struggling, or I'm away at a doctor's appointment or whatever it is. But do we want to say anything more about So we have, it says, if you would like to meet to work with an aspect of your practice in a one-to-one meeting, please print your name below. Okay, so we'll do it that way. So if you want a one-to-one, it's about practice. Something about practice, which means this kind of practice, formal practice or informal practice or soul-making practice in life. It's not just because you want to say hi or hang out or whatever. So think, if there's something, an aspect of your practice that you would like to work with or talk through or get some guidance on, put your name down here and we'll try and get to you. One of us will try and get to you and we'll let you know when. But that gives you also, again, your responsibility to think about what is it that I want to explore, or what is it that I feel I need some help with. So you want to be quite specific. And Catherine will offer groups as well. So there'll be one-to-one in groups, chance to work. Yeah? So, okie doke. So, thank you for your wonderful questions. There were a lot of them, and they're great, wonderful, and probably won't get to all of them. There were a couple I couldn't quite read as well, but even of the ones I could, we probably won't have time. So I've put them in an order that just seemed to have a kind of thread through it, so we can weave them together, if that makes sense. So we'll just try that. The first one's not really a question, but unless there's something missing, but it's important. It says, sometimes it feels like there is too much on offer, and I get a bit lost and overwhelmed. So whoever wrote this, you're not alone. There is a lot on offer. There is too much on offer in terms of, what, am I going to have it all down by the end of the week? Am I going to have it all down by the end of the year? No. There is a lot. So really important to realize that, number one. Number two, really important to be kind to yourself. So when I feel lost and overwhelmed, or I'm not what does the mind do with that? All these other people know exactly what's going on, and they're totally on top of it, and it's just me, or I'm a failure, or the inner critic. So really, really, please take care of the kindness with that. It's so important. There is a lot. It does demand a lot. It's very sophisticated. It asks a lot in terms of bases of practice on which to then build and extend. There's to say otherwise would be just kind of ridiculous. Yeah. Each of us is on our journey with these practices, and it's completely fine. There's no race. There's no time scale. So please just watch what the mind does with that, and what the heart does with that in terms of. We need the base of kindness and compassion. Yeah, all this stuff it might be difficult, but it's also delightful and lovely. And it's like, I think I said on the last retreat, it's like having an enormous banquet laid out and then feeling completely overwhelmed. You don't have to eat it all at once. This has special kind of preservative on it, but it's good. It's not bad chemicals. It's good chemicals. It will stay. It's here. Each person might also have their particular order in which they unfold. So there isn't a first you do this and then you do that. Sometimes we make it sound like there is, because when you teach, you have to you have to present things in order, but it's not necessarily like that. So it's more like a ball of wool, and you just, well, here's this one sticking out, and it seems to be in my face, and it looks kind of interesting, so I'll just pull on that. And I see, after a while, I say, I'm getting the hang of this, and I see, it's connected to this one, and that starts to unravel that one. All the aspects of the teachings are interrelated completely. I would suggest, so please take care of the kindness. Watch the conclusions that the mind is making about yourself. Practically speaking, just choose one bit, if this is the case, choose one bit that either you can't avoid because you just keep bumping into it, or it's actually interesting to you. It's like, I had a bit of glimmer of something with that, that sounds really, and just go for that. And if the whole week is spent on If the whole week is spent on the energy body, great. If the whole week is spent on the energy body around emotions, fantastic. It's one bit of the teaching and it's priceless, absolutely priceless. And the rest, hey, it's being recorded, it's out there, don't worry, yeah? So to be practical and things will unfold. Does that make sense? Really, really important. Take your time. You know, I know this. I know it as a dharma practitioner, I know it as a musician. Learning so many different skills involved in being a musician, whatever it is, jazz musician, this or that, it can be completely overwhelming. Take a little piece, put a little box around it, and dive in and get creative and practice, and it will start to suggest other things and expand. Yeah? Is that right? It's okay. Okay, so one question here is pretty direct. What is the energy body? So it's actually not that easy to answer. Let's say this. Let's go back to. So we're all used to mindfulness of the body. We're all used to practicing with the body in a dharma context. And say, what is the body? Let's leave the word energy body for a start. What is the body, and what is it to be aware of the body? When you're a dharma practitioner being mindful of the body, there are actually, we could say, let's approach it. We could say there are three interwoven aspects of bodily experience. So when I'm mindful of the body or aware of the body, actually at that time there is a felt sense of experience or sensations, usually in this location here. That's one aspect, right? It's the felt sense or the sensations. Yeah? Second aspect, not always so talked about in certainly in insight meditation circles, is the image of that body, the image of what it is that I'm paying attention to. So shut my eyes and the teacher says, be aware of the sensations of the feet or the sensations on the bum on the cushion or whatever. Subtly or less subtly, there's an image. Now it's probably not an imaginal image, it's just an image. It's some kind of representation of this body. In other words, I'm looking at Mary right now. In the back of my mind, there's still a kind of picture, if you like, of this body, Rob's body. And it's just part of my awareness. It has a certain form. In the usual consciousness, it has the form of two arms and two legs and whatnot. It has, you understand? It's just, yeah. So, felt sense or sensations, image, and the third is the idea of the body, the concept or the logos of the body. What is a body? Now, most of us are totally saturated and indoctrinated with a Western materialist view of the body, and so wrapped up, there will be a whole huddle of ideas about atoms, perhaps, or solidity, or what matter is, what a body is. Maybe mixed with that, there's ideas of what is an attractive body and whether mine is one or not, and this and that. Yeah. So there's felt sense, image, and idea. Right? When we start talking about energy body, we're just saying, let's take those three aspects and just open them way up, way up, so that the possible range of felt sensations becomes infinite. There's no limit to what the felt sense of this space might be. So usually you stop a person on the street and you say, what are you aware of in your body? And of course most people are not that aware until they, hurt themselves or there's some intense pleasure or something. With practicing mindfulness, you're more aware, oh yeah, the bum on the cushion feels just kind of so neutral. There's warmth, there's pressure, there's maybe a little bit of tingling or whatever. So there's a certain expansion of the range of awareness. As you practice, as you open that up, the range gets huger, more huge. So it could be anything. It's actually, the felt sense feels like completely empty space, or the felt sense feels like dense rock, or the felt sense feels like a kind of warm field of ethereal energy. Could be anything, absolutely anything. Yeah? So that opens up when we talk about energy body, that range. The image too. So this is when first started teaching about energy body, it was really more about that felt sense. And I gave it the words energy body and subtle body to kind of help encourage the range of experience to move more into this more open, more ethereal, more harmonized, more energized sense that tends to occur when there's samadhi or letting go. But actually we want the range even more than that, so that the image too of the body starts to open. It's not, I don't necessarily have to have this usual form that everyone would agree on. I could have a body of fire. I could have the usual form, but it's bellowing fire from my mouth. I could have wings. I could be made of water. It's infinite, the image of the body. So the body itself is given permission and possibility to become imaginal, the imaginal body. Does this make sense? So when I started using the words energy body in teaching, it was in the context of teaching samadhi, teaching jhana practice and samatha, and teaching emptiness. And that, as I said, tends towards a certain range of experience. Now we're doing soul-making practice, we keep all that as possibility, and we add an infinite range, absolutely infinite range of the image. So we can talk about the imaginal body, or the poetic body. Those were two terms that Justin, who's not here, suggested a little while ago. The imaginal body or the energy body. The imaginal body or the poetic body. Does that resonate? Yes? So, there's the felt sense has opened its possible range. The image of the body has opened its possible range. And the idea of the body has opened its possible range. Meaning I include, yes, atoms and chemicals and biochemical processes, of course, all that we're schooled in and used to, but I'm not limiting it to that. So in a way, the energy body is really an attitude more than an experience. It's a poise of the awareness that allows an openness, allows an opening of the range of the felt sense, of the image, of the ideas of the body, to include our usual conventional ones that everyone on the street would agree with and every mainstream dharma practitioner would agree with. But it opens it up beyond just that. Does this make sense? Yeah? So it's a weird thing. So someone asked why. Rob mentioned before he wished he had called energy body by a different name. What would he have called it instead, and why, please? So a couple of things there. One is actually not just with the word energy body, but also with the words eros and image and soul and I don't know, any of these words we use. I wish if I could go back in time that we'd just had different words right from the beginning, because it's possible that someone has studied eros in a different context, and it means something slightly different. It means something different than what we mean, or imaginal, or image, or soul. So that's one of the reasons. Is it would be easy, and I think it's quite common, to, just because words are the same, to assume that we're talking about the same thing. And then what happens is a certain direction gets washed over or diluted or mixed with other directions. Not better, not worse, but just different. There are certain possibilities that will open up through this path, with the way we're talking about the energy body, the way we're talking about imaginal and soul, that that won't actually open, whether you've done it in your psychotherapeutic training or a shamanistic training or this or that, tantra, whatever. Not better, not worse, some overlap but different. And so if we're not a little careful with words, there's a way it can all just be, oh, I know that, and something collapses and gets confused and diluted. So that's one of the reasons. The other reason is just what I just said. I used the words energy body and subtle body originally because it was in the service of samadhi experience and unfabricating of perception, emptiness experience, which tends towards very ethereal, very open, harmonized, etc., and a kind of blurring of the form of the body. So the boundaries dissolve. There is just a kind of field of light, for instance, or a field of pleasure. It's great as one portion, but if we want to extend the range into more the imaginal body and the poetic body, then we have to kind of stretch these words. All these words that we're using, I've said this before, whatever they are, eros, humility, any soul, they have to be loose and elastic. There's a balance between them needing to be very precise and differentiated, what we mean, and then actually stretching as our experience grows and they become infused with soul. So back to what I said before, so we could talk about this energy body as really energy body awareness, or it's a kind of poise of the attention, a kind of stance or attitude or modulation of the attention that allows rather than shuts down the range of possibility. So it's weird. It sounds like it's a thing, the energy body, and it must be a certain experience. No, really it's more in a kind of awareness. You understand? So that's another reason why it got the wrong words. It's more on the subject side of things, and then the object side, the range can be huge. So it's a poise, a stance, an attunement that allows an expansion of the range of the sense, the felt sense, the image, and the idea of what we call body. And on top of that, it's also a poise that is more particular, and that at any time attunes itself to what is appearing. This is a little more difficult to describe, but it's almost like sometimes, if I say, all right, I'm going to look at that, I don't know, whatever that notice is on the wall. I can't. Is it a notice? What is that? Whatever that is on the wall there. I can. Okay, I put my attention in a certain location. It's not an attunement. An attunement is something more to do with the kind of the modulation or the delicacy of the attention. And I was trying to think, what's an example? Sometimes when you're listening, and if you're listening for something delicate, then it's not that I have to scrunch up and force my attention. Actually, I need to somehow make my hearing attention more delicate. Yeah, something similar with the energy body. There's a kind of poise that needs to be commensurate with, in tune with what the experience is. So if what's happening is I'm practicing and there's a lot of kind of lightness and ethereality in this space, that actually takes a kind of delicacy of attention. It's a delicate perception which needs a kind of delicate attention. Does that make any sense? Yeah? So when we say energy body, we mean the kind of poised stance that allows an open range, that doesn't box it into what we've been taught or what we're used to in terms of felt sense, image, or idea, but that also particularly tunes to what's happening now, let's say in a helpful way. Either in a helpful way, meaning it's helping the samadhi, it's helping me navigate, it's helping me sense what's if I'm letting go or if I'm craving, and also helpful in terms of the soul making. Yeah. So tuned how? Well, tuned in a helpful way, either soul making or helpful in terms of letting go, etc. Does that? Yes. Okay, so how has your experience of the energy body deepened over time, and or examples of how shifting the experience of the energy body shifted the range of image? Okay, so, well, maybe I'd, in a way, pick up on what I said before. When I started with the energy body, I think I learnt it from Ajahn Jeff, who's some of you know, Ajahn Thanissaro, to do with breath meditation. It was very much to do with samatha, developing samadhi and jhana, etc. And I also did a little qigong, and sort of put those two together and just started experimenting on my own. But it was in the service of that, so that the range of experience that I had, because that was my idea and because that was my intention, those were my intentions. It had to do with samadhi. It stayed pretty much within that realm of possibility: ethereality, density, contraction, openness, harmonization, energization, etc. Right? Once I started getting into imaginal practice and opening that, then these other possibilities open up of the body becoming image, or energy becoming image, which is a slightly different thing. So you can feel, for instance, the energy between two people, and you think, oh, that's what's happening, but it can also become image, as opposed to a reified thing. And so then all kinds of possibilities. There's fire bodies, fire bellowing. I've shared lots of these before. The body is here. It's almost like there's two awarenesses of the body at one time. I can feel the body sitting, the sensations. I can also feel the sort of energetic tone or texture or vibration of this space. And at the same time, there's some image or other, and I'm flying over there. And I have this double awareness at the same time. It may sound like it's really sophisticated, but it just happens, okay? And it can happen to you. Not that it should or shouldn't, but it's a possibility. So there's this, somehow my energy body is over there flying or turning cartwheels in joy or whatever it is, and I'm somehow aware of how that feels, and I'm somehow aware of how this stationary body that everyone can see and would agree on, Rob is sitting there, I'm aware of how that feels. It's a kind of not splitting because that has negative connotations. There's a kind of double awareness. Yeah, so that would be an example. Let me share something that happened this morning on this note. So Catherine did her lovely instructions, and she said about touching the body. And so I, as you did, I started touching my body, and immediately aware of the weariness and weakness and the depletion in my body from illness and treatments. So grief comes, okay? So immediately see what's happening. There's certain instructions, very conventional, so to speak, and it might say, even with the intention of love, and then but I'm including the emotion, so that's already something bigger. There's story involved, so this is an option. In other words, the narrative of my life, the narrative of the illness, the possibility of my dying, the probability of my dying soon, all that is there. Compassion, there was compassion for this body and for the trials and tribulations and what it has to go through, what I have to go through. What happened to the self sense at that point? it could be with the toucher. I am the one touching this body, or the self could be identified with the touched, the one touched. I am the body touched, and these hands are touching me. Do you understand? So this is normal about self. It'll self-identification. It'll go here or there, or it can move around what it identifies with. In this case, it just happened that I was, let's say, more identified with the body that was, weary and wounded, etc. And being touched with love. And whose hands were these? Well, you said, well, they're your hands, Rob, don't be silly. But actually, no, I didn't know whose hands they were. They were angels' hands. When we stopped touching, the hands were still there. And blessing and loving and tending to all that. And with the sense of it, I'm not necessarily, I don't have to go into just sensation, no story, no, I could. That's a certain mode, and we're used to that from mindfulness. Get in right close to the so-called bare sensations, etc. But in imaginal practice, and when we talk about opening up the energy body experience, there's all kinds of possibilities. So this included, as I said, the narrative of this body. Actually, I've been ill since my 20s, but the narrative of that, not just the bodily narrative, the narrative of my life. My death has already happened. I'm already dead. From an imaginal perspective. There's this, some of you have heard me tend, what is it to see, to sense things, to sense one's existence, one's life and death, from the perspective of eternity, from the perspective of beyond death, of the eternal. So that got mixed up with it. Now you see how this simple bodily experience that could be as simple as I touch my chest and what do I notice? There's warmth and pressure. Okay, and then maybe there's some kindness as well. Great, that's great, but it's quite a narrow range. It's not good or bad, it's just, that's a certain normal narrow range for Dharma practitioners. And this opened up to include and draw into it all kinds of other elements and aspects of my being that were becoming ensouled. Is this making sense? Yes? So the emotion was there, the grief, the bodily experience, the weariness, the compassion, the angelic nature of it, the self, the narrative, the life, the death, the eternality, all that was there. The mystery. Invisible hands kept doing that. It was very, very beautiful. So there's, for example, we could give so many examples. There's just one example of a way then that the bodily experience started to become more imaginal, and the idea of body, all that what I said, felt sense, image and idea, it starts to expand, starts to draw in all kinds of other elements. It doesn't stay necessarily that small. Now it wasn't that my mind was wandering, and I'm just like blah blah blah. Oh, I wonder what. It's not that. There's quite a lot of stillness and containment, but the range is gotten wider and richer, more multidimensional, more multi-aspected. Yes? So that would be an example. So when Justin suggested these two words, a poetic body or imaginal body, I really liked it. Everything has drawbacks. The drawback with poetic body is that for some people it will emphasize too much an idea of poetry without the felt sense. And as for me, insight meditation is it's so rooted in the felt sense. So that was one reason for keeping the word energy body. Okay, maybe that's enough on that. How does energy body relate to concept of aura? A-U-R-A. It will depend. Okay, it's not a word I use a lot. I don't have any problems with it. It's just that in my experience, the word aura and the context in which it is used. Does everyone know what that means, aura? It's sort of, let's very loosely, it's people talk in certain circles, maybe certain healing circles or so-called New Age circles or other things, perhaps shamanistic circles. It's the, let's say, the perceivable energy field, human beings or trees or anything, and animals, perceivable energy field. And it's usually perceived visually, perhaps with colors or certain levels, sheaths or, something like that. Or maybe you see the chakras or something. Yeah, so you come across this kind of thing. Yeah, so it's really fine. One of the differences is in terms of reification, meaning that usually the context in which the concept of aura is used is a context in which there is an assertion, either explicitly or implicitly. This is a real thing that we're talking about, and one day we'll be able to measure it scientifically. And if you can train your awareness, two people will read someone's aura the same way and come. It's objective, it's independent, it has inherent existence. You understand? With all of these teachings, we're tending away from the reification. So energy body is an experience that's created, discovered in the moment, and is not postulated either subconsciously or consciously as real. This is the way it is. This is a truth. This has an inherent existence. Yeah? So that's one distinction. It's a really, really important one. It's massive. It makes a huge difference. Huge. Already in the aura, there will probably be some limit given by that concept and the context it's in of those ranges of felt sense, image, and idea. There'll be some limit, and it will be a reified one. Second, I guess I tend to be quite kinesthetic, which means that I tend to feel things in my energy and body rather than see them. So if I'm working one-on-one with, sometimes I feel like I can feel what's happening in the other person's energy body somewhat, or we can. But some people are more visual, so you may actually, that may be more your modality, that it's more visual. So I'm conscious of how much, I don't actually know what the answer is, but how much these teachings may be shaped by my personal proclivities to be not that visual and more kinesthetic. I don't know the answer, but that's a thought. Aside from, are we doing okay? Yeah. Aside from materialist and modernist logoi, ideas, concepts, what other common conceptions limit people's experience of the energy body? Well, one of them is just, for instance, that one might be too limited in terms of the idea of an aura, for instance, or the idea of chakras and where they are. One has been taught a certain system of, this is the energy body, it looks like this, this is in this place, and that's in that place, and that's how it is. And it just gets taken as a truth and reified and not understood and not participated in as something that is created, discovered. Yeah? So that would be one way. And of course, it's rarer in the wider culture. Is the sound okay? Can you hear? Yeah? Eamon, can you hear? The tendency, the most common views in our Western culture are indeed materialist and what we might call modernist. But if you just go to twoness or something, there might be actually the dominant view is something different, and it's more what we might call mentalist or spiritualist or something like that. So one could get equally trapped in that kind of logos, that kind of concept, But actually, any idea. So there's something, if we go back to the eros psyche logos dynamic, which we'll leave for another day, but soul-making dynamic stretches things. It will stretch everything. It will stretch whatever logos, whatever idea, whatever concept, whatever belief, whatever experience, in its time, as it ripens, if we do not get in the way. If we allow it to do its work and ferment things, like fermenting bread or fermenting yeast, it will rise, it will expand, and it will push against ideas, images, conceptions, beliefs, views, etc., etc., ranges of experience. So there could actually be absolutely any idea about the body, that the body is here and not there, that it's separate, that it's mine, that it's countless, countless. So there's something inherent in the soul-making dynamic that will eventually, if we let it do its work, push and either shatter or just stretch. Yeah, so it could be anything. When the energy body collapses, how do I discern between constriction of the energy body or a change or shift of my way of perception? Or are they both the same? I'll read it again. When the energy body collapses, how do I discern between constriction of the energy body or a change or shift of my way of perception? Or are they both the same? They're both the same. In other words, so the energy body is not a certain experience. I can sit here and be aware of the energy body and report that it feels contracted or tight or small or whatever it is, and I'm still aware of the energy body. If I make my awareness big, so there's a difference in the awareness stretching. If I open up the awareness to include, let's say, just this much space, sort of a bit bigger than my physical body, my obvious physical body, and if I just am sensitive, delicately open and attuned to the vibration, the texture, the felt sense there, the possible image, and which may be completely conventional, and possible ideas, which again may be completely conventional at that time, then my energy body awareness is open. That's all I have to do. So there's not a right or wrong experience. It's more like it will get contracted. If you're not seeing that the energy body experience feels contracted or constricted many times a day, in and out, you're not paying enough attention. There's just, whoever you are, even if you're a Buddha, it's going to do that. Okay? Maybe not a Buddha. I don't know about Buddhas, but so the object, the experience, the object can have this huge range, but I can always just open up the field and just be there with this kind of open, delicate awareness. You understand? Everything is connected, though, you'll see, so that what the actual experience is in the energy body depends on the kind of attention I give it. It's not like I can separate this subjective and objective pole. So that if my attention is if I keep opening the attention, the experience of the energy body will tend to open up. It will tend to lighten. It will tend to harmonize and energize, because experience of anything is dependent on the way I pay attention. Not always, and it might take some time, etc. But that's all I have to do. I don't have to say that this is the wrong experience, because it's not the wrong experience. It's more, as I said, the poise, the stance of my attention. Yeah? But that poise and stance, then for instance, if I go back to the example I give, then if, let's say, in my attention as well, either deliberately or by the grace of the angels and the divine and the Buddha nature, some compassion, some love comes in, or at least any judgmentalism and reactivity lessens, then I've got a different kind of attention. And that different kind of attention, because everything is a dependent arising, will give rise to will seed a different experience. Do you understand? Everything depends on attention, on the kinds of attention, the modes of attention, the way of looking. Everything depends on the way of looking. You have mentioned the energy body can feel twisted or negative. I only feel it when I feel expansive, connected, absorbed, not when contracted. How is that possible, or have I misunderstood? I wonder if that's connected to what we just talked about. In other words, the energy body is not just this kind of experience or that kind of experience. It's an infinite range, way broader than certainly most people in the culture will be used to. Even the most insight meditation cultures will be used to. So if I'm feeling whatever it is, depressed or angry or fearful or reactive or withdrawn or whatever, or just there's some clinging, I will notice that happen in the energy body, and that's what the energy body is at that time. That's what it feels like. Yeah, and I can give that more attention, and I can see if I can kind of take care of the kind of attention that I give it, so that it's helpful. Is this answering that question? Yeah? Good. What is the kind of information I can read from a contracted or expanded energy body in the face of the other person or event or whatever? Is intentional expansion always a skillful response? Creating space internally or externally to receive further response options? Question mark. What is the kind of information I can read from a contracted or expanded energy body in the face of the other person? So maybe this is a question both about the balance of attention and twoness practices, and also the energy body. So when the energy body is contracted, it means there's some clinging, some craving. When it's more open, it means there's less clinging and craving. So that's the most basic kind of information. And that's really, really important. Okay, that's dharma-wise, that's a fundamental navigation. When is this second noble truth? One of them. Just kidding. You know I know what they are. Sorry. It's really fundamental information. Yeah. Is there clinging and craving here? Because that's going to lead to dukkha. That's going to tie me up in papancha and reification and all that misery. Or is there less? Where is it moving? So that's a really important read. I think, following on from what Catherine said this morning, with the exercises with another in relationship, in dyad, in twoness, in the balance of attention, it's not wrong. I sit down in front of this person's coming towards me down the corridor, and I notice a contraction. Well, then it's time to get interested. Now, there could be all kinds of it could be that I just notice that and I find a way of just opening it. It could be that actually I'm really interested. Well, what's happening? Is there a specific fear there? Yeah, I'm afraid they're going to judge me. I'm afraid I feel whatever it is. I feel a bit dull today, and I think they're going to judge that, or I feel not interesting, or I'm ugly, or whatever it is. Yeah, or I really want them to see how handsome I am, or whatever it is. All this, it's good to know. Oh, that's one of my patterns. I start to see that again and again. Okay, now what does that need? Now we don't know the answer because it's going to be specific, but that's really, really good information to be able to read. Yeah. When there's eros rather than craving, the energy body tends to open and tends to harmonization and more ease and more delight, etc. So that's part of the navigation. Now there's eros here, or at least openness, and that's good to know that. It also tells us when we're on the right track in terms of this thing. If the other is an event or an image, this is soul-making. It's part of how I get the sense that I'm on the right track in my practice is by the read of the energy body. If I'm going for samadhi, the energy body tells me whatever I've just done, I've given more intensity to the attention and like really drilled into the breath or whatever. And then I notice my energy body contract. Okay, that's telling me maybe what I've just done with the attention is a bit too much and it's causing a contraction. Or I do that and there's energy comes and it's open. Oh, great, it's the right thing. It's not always going to be the same answer. So you're always kind of like a sailor at sea, just receptive to how the wind catches the sail, and I can feel it in my arm. I can see it, I can feel it in my arm, yeah? So practice is like that. It's like reading the billowing of the sail, etc. Whatever I'm doing, if it's samadhi, if it's metta, if it's emptiness practices, if it's imaginal practices, this energy body is one of the aspects that gives a really good read on navigation in the moment. But in addition to that, there's a whole range of personal psychological, let's say, issues and patterns that's so important. We talk about roots of soul. Catherine was, a little while ago, we were having a conversation, some months ago in fact, and it's a bit like someone starts regular dharma practice, and because, not necessarily because they want to get rid of suffering, but let's say this person, this hypothetical person, they sense the possibility of the mystic, of mystical experience, or they hear about the unfabricated, they don't understand what it means, or emptiness, I don't understand it, but something of that pulls me, calls me. And so I book on a retreat, and that's my heart's desire. I want to know that, for example. And day 2, day 3, that's not what's going on. It's my knees are screaming, and my mother and my father and my siblings or whatever. I may have to work with all that stuff. Heal it, understand it, make it into soul eventually. These are parts of the roots of soul. Parts of the roots of soul. Now that happens again, not in a linear way, not in a, there's not a dogma of order. It's not like, first you have to do this in therapy and then you necessarily. But for some people it is. But these aspects of psychological or relational difficulty, they're part of the information, the kinds of information I can read from a contracted or expanded energy body. Where is my joy? Where is where are the kinds of ways I contract, and what does that need? Yeah. So a lot of this is just about psychological awareness and relational skills and awareness. Okay, it's 5:30. What should we do? Is that because it's a holy number? All right. I have noticed that my energy body has a dark side and a light side, changing at the midline. In vision too, one eye has warm light, the other more blue. is this just an epiphenomenon, or can I use it for soul-making, even if it is just an epiphenomenon? So, wonderful. I've never come across anything like that before, but so what? Is this just an epiphenomenon, or can I use it for soul-making? You can use it for soul-making. Do you have to? Not necessarily, but it's possible. Exactly what that would involve, we don't know. Anything can be made into soul. Now, if it turns out that they call you in for a brain scan, and the doctors say to you, "Oh, Hazel, we found this curious thing in your brain that causes you to experience this," then and they say that's what's causing this, and you say, "Oh, it has nothing to do with soul." But no, because in the soul making, we don't reduce to one causal explanation. Sure, I've got a funny thing in my brain, and it might cause something from a certain perspective, but because soul making, we make soul. It involves our participation. We're asked to create, discover. So anything, even if the doctors or whoever says it's because of this, can be made into soul. Yeah. So, but you don't have to. You might feel drawn to, and then it's a question of being creative and playful and navigating and sensing where is the soulfulness, where is the sense of soulfulness with this experience? How does it start to complexify, etc.? And you can follow your sense of soul making and allow soul to be made through this probably somewhat unusual experience. Yeah? At times I can get very high, manic even, especially when working with desire with the heart's desire in the energy body. Can you say something about this? I'd probably have to hear a bit more about the specifics, but first thing is, I think, not to, again, okay, so I feel manic and high. Manic already is a loaded word to me. I don't know. It has a lot of negative connotations. So my first question would be, okay, does it really have that negative connotations, or is it just an energy state that I'm not yet used to, and that's not most people in the culture aren't used to, and most meditation circles don't talk about. So again, watch what the mind is doing, because it might just be, and what will happen, and actually what needs to happen with some people, is the range of their, let's say, capacities of energetic capacities needs to grow. Without realizing it, the person is kind, is mindful, is calm and clear, and knows the teachings and practice as well, etc. Without realizing it, the energy and the range of energy that can move through that being is actually quite tightly limited. There is not the possibility of a lot of energy. And with that, there is not the possibility of a lot of emotion. And there is not the possibility of a real fecundity and richness of soul-making image. Nothing's a root cause, so everything feeds everything else. But it might be that for some people, actually something does I need to learn how to tolerate more energy, to allow more to come through, to be okay with that. It doesn't mean I have to have some bonkers Kundalini experience for 5 years and then, melt down. Hopefully not. Having been through that kind of thing years ago, I don't recommend it. But generally speaking, some people are unaware of the ways in which their whole experience, not just of energy and body, but also of image and emotion, and therefore of self and life, etc., is actually contracted. And it's not at all obvious that there is a kind of a lock on that. And actually there's a very minimal amount of energy being admitted into the system. So one thing is watch the judgment, the conclusions that are being made. Another, just practically speaking, if there is a lot of energy, and as I said, I'd have to hear more about the specifics there, but expanding the awareness, giving it more space. It's like if the container is too small, the pressure is higher, right? There's more pressure. There's more air in a smaller space. It's higher pressure, right? It's more uncomfortable. So just expanding the container and give it some holes. Help if it's really a lot. It may want to come out the energy in certain ways. What does it want to do? Maybe it wants to shoot out the throat, or out the back of the neck and the throat, or out the heart, or out the feet, or out the top of the head, and just let it do that. Let the imagination do that. So you're kind of modulating it that way. It also depends how much skill. So obviously, I don't know who wrote the note and what experiences, what teachings they're familiar with, but. If I reify it, if it's a real thing that's happening, this energy state, and I'm convinced of its reality and it's concrete, then that adds to its difficulty. So can I see it as theatre? Can I see it as empty? Even if I feel I'm not very advanced in this emptiness business, can I see it as theatre? That tends to take some of the pressure off and release. I think I would need more specifics before that, before I could say more. Look, I'm happy to do a couple more, but I don't know, I'm not sure. Some of you will need to go and... Yeah. So... Okay. I sort of think energy body plus the presence of the aspects of the lattice, the elements of the imaginal that we've talked about on other retreats, in meditation is soul-making practice. Energy body plus the presence of the aspects of the elements of the imaginal. What are your thoughts on energy body and presence of the elements of the lattice in singing, art, movement, play, anything? Would you consider this soul-making practice? Could you elaborate, please? It depends. It depends on a number of things. One of the principles, let me just say one brief thing right now. One of the things it depends on is what the intention is. Okay, so certainly soul-making soul-making practice is not confined to any posture or any activity. It could be anything at all, in relation, in making art, in speaking, in walking down the road, in whatever it is. What does make a difference, I think, is the intention. We talked about the elements, and one of them is fullness of intention, meaning that the intention is not limited to, for instance, to me, as an artist has specific intentions. My intention is to make this piece of art and to do it well and to find the right words or to find the right colors or whatever it is. And so I'm tuned to the aesthetic product. I care about that. I have a responsibility to that as an artist. If that takes over my intention, then it's art practice that may feel soulful and it's great. Fullness of intention means that it's not just the product. It's not just the healing. It's the soul-making that kind of is also included in the intention. It's a full intention, a full range of intention. So that's probably one of the things that makes a difference. I know, as a composer and poet and all kinds of, sometimes the process just felt nuts, crazy, very unmindful even, because I was so intent on getting the product just so, and reading that product. You might go in and out of a sense of soul making, but my responsibility as an artist was to the product, was to the art, the piece, I felt. Yeah, so you can add... Yeah, that's okay. So one thing I wanted to add, thank you, was people have very different relationships with the artistic process, very different. So I think you have to kind of go with your sense. And with, I'm a certain personality and a certain artistic personality, so I wouldn't want to put that on everyone. But I think with going back to everything we've said about soul making, it's like keep it open. So whatever you know and whatever you experience, just be aware there may be more. There may be more at the edges that you've yet to kind of encounter and come across. That's all. Yeah. But I totally appreciate it, and I think that's important and right. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I would really love to do this next question, but I think we should probably stop. Okay. I can let go. Yeah. Okay, is that okay? It was just such... all right, thank you. Following Catherine's instruction in the morning about ensouling the energy body work and the twoness exercise something, could you say something about the possibility of letting the energy body move towards or move into jhana, absorption, within a soul-making framework? On the one hand, in jhana, there's so jhana, if you don't know this word, is meditative absorption in some kind of yumminess, put it that way. And there's different flavors. There's lots of different flavors of yumminess, and the Buddha outlined 8 in particular, but actually there's more and there's gradations. It's yummy. It's a Pali word. On the one hand, in jhana, there's a desire and movement towards absorption and merging rather than twoness, and I seem to remember Rob contrasting them on a number of occasions. Jhanas and soul-making, contrasting them. On the other hand, on my personal retreat lately, I've been encountering the first jhanas, and it felt related to imaginal work in various ways. First of all, the jhanas themselves appeared as many-faced others, and relationship with them felt rich and nuanced and highly erotic. And even when there was strong movement towards merging, there was still a sense of self as that which is merging into the other, so never fully one, but it might just be my inexperience. Then also, each jhana had specific images that were felt as her emanations or manifestations, not fully imaginal in some aspects, but richly so in others, like a condor gliding on hot air currents, or a human body floating at sea for first jhana, the scent of jasmine, or a deer drinking from a spring for the second. It's beautiful. A fully imaginal image that's very dear to me of a young man looking for gold in a stream became linked to the second jhana, and each could lead to the other. The jhana could lead to the image could lead to the jhana. And lastly, various kinds of images seemed to tend to lead the energy body towards different jhanas, soulful sexual images or concepts charged with eros to the first jhana, images of non-sexual love, eros, metta to the second, and they could be held rather vividly throughout the first jhana and most of the second. The images could be held through the jhana and most of the second, and even when disappearing towards the deeper end of the second, as I so far know her, their scent remained. Sorry for the length. Thank you for creating this retreat where such a question can be asked. P.S. On rereading, this seems a rather dry list. Doesn't seem dry at all to me. But the experiences themselves aren't dry or clear-cut at all, but mysterious and constantly transforming. So, yeah, lovely. Totally what I would expect. Completely. I think it's good to be, if this kind of thing is happening, or if it happens later on for you, if you start getting into this kind of territory, what's good again is to be clear about the intention and the leaning at any time. So some of you have heard me, it's like, use the analogy of a bird, like a bird of prey. You know, if it just wants to change direction, just tilt the wings a little bit and ride that thermal that way. If I want to go that way, just tilt the wings and ride that thermal that way. Can go deeper into a jhana and the image will fade. Even if a certain image might have triggered that jhana. At the beginning, for quite a while at the beginning of jhana practice, people often find certain images that either come up in the jhana that seem to sort of express the jhana, or that trigger the jhana, that open the door to a certain jhana. A certain memory even, or an image brings delight, and then I can go with the delight and suffuse the body with delight. So even if that's how I kick-started, eventually one doesn't need any images. One can just remember a jhana and go into it. But that's quite a stage that of an image perhaps triggering. There can be all kinds of things. And of course the Buddha gives images for the jhanas as well. But so even if I started, I kick-started this pleasant state with an image, then my navigation comes in. What am I doing now? Where am I going to set my dial? Am I going to go just fully into the nice feeling, the yumminess, and just really get into that and let the image really go to the background? Maybe I kind of use the image just as like can let it go like you know, one of those glider aircraft. They get pulled by the other plane, and then you can let go of the rope, yeah, and then it can fly. Gliders don't do that. So. Do you understand? So it's a matter of navigation and intention. There's not a right or wrong, okay? But I'm clear what I'm doing. What's my intention at any time? It's fine. If I want to go more into the samadhi, I just steer that way. If I want to go more into the image and the soul of the image, and then it's like I may be aware of there's all this yumminess and lovely feeling, but actually I'm more in the nuance of the image and the soul aspect of the image. Or I might be somewhere in the middle territory, and that's fine too. Yeah? So it's really a matter of intention and clarity of intention at any time. Yes, the jhanas are going to be rich and filled with eros, even if they're not imaginal. When they're new, the soul, the psyche, is opening to new territory, and it's look. If you're doing jhana practice and you're coming to me saying, I opened to the second jhana, and I say, how was it? And you say, oh, it's nice. I'm like, wrong. Sorry, not wrong, but you should be like coming and saying, oh my goodness, that was just the most fantastic experience I've ever had in my life. And it touches you to the core of the being, the beauty of it, the loveliness of it. So there is eros. The soul is expanding, the psyche is expanding, the gorgeousness, the love, the attraction, all of that. Even when there was a strong movement towards merging, there was still a sense of self as that which is merging into that. There's less self-sense in a jhanic experience, but there is still self-sense. There is not the complete cessation of self-sense. So there's still a duality. No matter how merged and melted you feel, there's still a duality. It's subtle. People don't notice it at first. After a while, your eyes get used to the dark and say, hold on. Then people think, oh, I'm doing this wrong. They're not. It's natural. Only in a cessation experience is there the absence of any self-object duality. Have I addressed the questions there? Is there something I'm missing? Yeah, so what we can talk about is one of the things, one of the aspects of jhana practice we can talk about is the degree of absorption, let's say, and the degree of sort of, yeah. So if I push on that pedal a little more, into more absorption, yeah, then basically there'll be a fading of images, and it comes more to this sort of amorphous, unformed experience of energy body or light or that kind of thing, yeah. But you don't have to do it, you don't. If you want to learn jhana practice, then you're going to have to do that sometimes. And that sometimes might be months and months, that's what I'm learning how to do. But there's no right or wrong, and you can, as I said, you can play with where you are on that spectrum, yeah? I think that was it. And also, partly what I would expect, with the second... Yeah, the rapture in the first jhana oftentimes does feel very sexual. People say, oh, it's like an orgasm, or it's like, yeah. So you would expect kind of sexual images to go with that. Oftentimes with the happiness of the second jhana, there's a lot of love in it. And sometimes people think, oh, the second jhana, it's primarily love, not happiness. But actually it's primarily happiness. It's just sometimes there's a lot of love in it. So again, sometimes we'd expect the metta and the love to be mixed with that. In other words, the kinds of images are exactly what I would expect. Is that okay for now? Okay, we really, really need to stop. No? Let's just have a few moments of silence before. Yeah? Just a little bit of silence and then we'll break.
Thank you for listening. To learn how you can support the teachers and Dharma Seed, please visit